actually define power, and how do you actually, is there any distinction between reinventing and redefining in terms of the power, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think reinventing versus redefining. I mean, I think at its core, like we're in a place where I think that most of us have been taught to aspire to a kind of power that really doesn't work, that, we're in a moment that well, many of us are questioning because of COVID, coming out of COVID, like, does that even work? We have such inequity that we're talking about in, very different ways. And so I think there's probably even a bigger word than either of those words that I probably would embrace. Like it's like almost like a blowing up and a starting over, when it comes to power. And so I think that's really what I'm talking about. I think most of us enter corporate spaces thinking that power sits in the seats at the top, and that once I get there, then I can show up differently. I'll do it my way. Up till then, like I'll compromise certain things. And one of the most shocking things that I found and why I wrote the book is because I started doing dinners, and I was in an attempt to figure out if I wanted to stay or go. And I started meeting with women of color. Ron and I ended up doing a bunch of dinners. But the real thing that came out of that is in one of the first dinners, a public company CFO said, I sit in a seat of power and I don't feel powerful. And then I started to see that in almost all the women that I was meeting. I was meeting with a lot of senior, like some of the biggest names in the country, right? And women of color. And they were sitting in seats, not all of them, but many of them were sitting in seats of power, and they had compromised in some ways who they were. They were sanitizing who they were. They were, whitewashing who they were. And I think that's really what I'm talking about, that power doesn't sit in the seats. Power comes from inside of us, and power comes when we are in full voice. And I think, unfortunately, most of us have been taught, once you get to the seat, it'll all be better and it'll be okay. And part of my message is, no, we have to find ways to be ourselves as we're growing, as we're going. And that, what you shared about your father, in some ways is very similar to the pattern that I see for a lot of women. Most of us only seek out our definition of success after a big life event happens. So usually it's a sickness or a divorce, or some sort of other wake up, like where we were promised a promotion that we didn't get. And it's only in those moments of crisis where we have done everything we were supposed to do. So let's say it's a health issue, right? I ran every day, I ate really healthy, and I saw a heart attack, right? Then it's like, but I followed all the rules and it still happened to me. It's only in those moments that we start to question, and what do I need to do differently? And so I'm trying to get us to do that about power before we get to that seat and we feel crisis, or we get to a seat and we're really questioning. I think there's a different way to do power. And I think that the moment that we're in is causing many of us to think about that. But I think for women and women of color, most of us are now reaching those seats and realizing that's not fulfilling, or that's not satisfying, or that's not even making us healthy and whole. It's actually depleting us. So we need to do that differently.